The meeting to order. Welcome everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We'll begin with the privilege of the floor, and I'd like to use the same rules that the legislature uses. That's 3 minutes speaking as an individual, 5 minutes if you're representing a group.
Hi, my name is Lynn Bedford, and I'm a resident of Arkwright. I really didn't know too much about windmills or what they would do to people or anything about them, but I have 8 of them surrounding my house. And I've been a healthy person all my life. I raise organic vegetables. We have organic chicken eggs. I live a very clean lifestyle, and I've never been sick. In 25 years, I've never been sick. The wind turbines turned on, and everybody asked me, before they turned on, they said, how do you feel about it? And I said, I'm keeping an open mind. You know, I really don't know what to think about it. Well, since they turned them on in September, my ears have not stopped ringing. They're ringing right now. Last weekend, we went away for 3 days to Ohio, and they stopped ringing for the first time since September. My health is going downhill right now. I had just told my husband a month ago, I said, it's funny because every once in a while I'll get a pain in my chest. I thought, well, maybe I'm not drinking enough water. Well, my husband has done some research on the internet about other countries and what they've done about windmills. And he has come up with that they're not allowed in many countries at all. And in other countries, the distance between the wind turbine and the residential home has to be 1.5 miles. Ours are 1,200, 300, 500, 800, 700 feet away from our house. Something has to be done. My quality of life is horrible. It's like a living hell at night hearing grinding going on. And now our house is closed up for the winter time, and we still hear it when they're facing our direction. We can't retire. Our retirement was supposed to be our home. We were going to do an Airbnb at our home. It's beautiful wooded area with gardens. Our retirement's gone. How can you have people come stay when there's this horrible grinding, or it sounds like a jet airplane is over your head and it doesn't stop? I urge this board, come to my house, spend a weekend, see it for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, my personal objective was to be sure that the Board of Health heard the concerns of the people, particularly the people who live near wind towers and some of the health-related issues. That was my personal objective. As far as the board goes, the word that we just used is ponder. We're going to ponder this. The good news one good news coming out of tonight's meeting is that we've increased the number of meetings from 4 until 6. So we'll be meeting every 2 months now instead of every 3 months. So we'll be able to deal with this more often. We do have some ways to go forward, and but we're in the beginning stages. We had another presentation by concerned members of the public, including people who live near wind towers. I think we brought the issue more to the attention of board members, and we're going to be looking into steps to take beyond letter writing. So we're in the early stages. As I understand the problem, it's not the number of decibels so much as it is infrasound and the effects of that on human health, including during the day, including sleeping, cardiac issues. It's when we think of sound, or at least when I think of sound, most people think of sound, they think of loudness, and that is not the problem here, at least as I understand it.
Earlier this year, the Western New York Public Health Alliance did issue a letter to the state, the Public Service Commission, requesting that there's a full, transparent process when it comes to the SEQR reviews for wind turbines. We have not received any response that I am aware of as of yet to that, but our local county board of health now would like to look into further advocating with the state for them to make sure that there's a full SEQR review before any wind turbines can be built. Right now, the Chautauqua County Board of Health is going to further investigate what's going on around the state and fellow boards of health, as well as fellow local health departments. I'm part of the New York State Association of County Health Officials. We'll be meeting later this month, so I will bring this up at the state meeting. And then also our Western New York Public Health Alliance is meeting again this month, so we will visit that again with the other public health directors and commissioners in the region to see what more we can do to try to at least get the full SEQR reviews done, and then anything else that we can do as far as advocating for any public health concerns related to the wind turbines. There are some large projects going on the banks of Lake Ontario, so that impacts Niagara and Orleans counties. And I know the public health directors in those counties also have concerns regarding the whole issue of not having a full SEQR review and not knowing for sure what the health risks could be associated to that.
I'll take it. Thank you, Tom.
Please state your name and your address, please.
Mark Twitchell, Fredonia, New York. And I took the liberty of placing in everybody's position on the table a written statement prepared for tonight. However, I think I'm going to go off that script because it's come to, I think, everyone's attention that perhaps we need to clarify what is an issue.
Which is what you provided?
Is it this one? This, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks. Just wanted to make sure everybody was clear there.
Yeah, thank you. What is an issue that deserves to be placed on the agenda versus an issue that is nonetheless respected but given to the privilege of the floor? And I came up with 3 reasons why the issue of wind turbines as a public health issue may not be on the agenda. The first being that wind turbine noise is not a clearly defined threat to public health. And that could be because there's no clearly demonstrated cause and effect for the infrasound component of the noise. It could be because wind turbine noise has been inaccurately placed outside of long-established understandings of noise as a public health issue. Just generically noise, how it affects the relationship between annoyance and health, the relationship between sleep and health, and the relationship between cardiovascular disease as promoted by environmental noise. You know, it's difficult to employ the precautionary principle when the relationship between association and causation is absent a widely recognized plausibility. Wind turbine noise complaints are nocebo-driven, and further attention to these only reinforce the problem. As such, these complaints resemble a social contagion, similar to the waves of illnesses and suicides that sweep through high schools with unknown etiology. These too shall pass. Why should we devote any time to this? The second reason for this issue to be not included on an agenda is that it's a political issue. There may be resentment at Board of Health meetings used for agendas other than health. To this, I quote the Center for Disease Control publication called Plagues, Public Health and Politics. Science, public health, and politics are not only compatible, but in conjunction, all 3 are necessary to improve the public's health. The third reason for perhaps feeling that this issue does not deserve placement on the agenda is that this is, after all, an issue for New York State. The New York State Department of Health is in charge of writing noise guidelines for wind turbine noise in New York State. However, my answer is New York State is constitutionally a home rule state. It's up to the townships and the counties to promote the public health and welfare of their constituents. Does every policy promoted by the Department of Health deserve unquestioned acceptance? It should be noted that the Department of Health is discriminatory in applying different wind turbine noise standards to different counties. The New York State Department of Health is not directly involved in permitting 2 of the wind farms in Chautauqua County, that being the already established Arkwright Wind Farm and the Ball Hill Wind Farm. New York State DOH is only directly involved in permitting the Casadega Wind Farm. And lastly, I want to use an example from my experience with the Department of Health, New York State Department of Health, working on the issue of fluoridation. I spent the first 2 decades of my career as a pediatric dentist believing that for optimum enamel formation during the formation of teeth, it was necessary to have fluoride in the bloodstream. Hence, the call for public water supply fluoridation. And I enjoyed my time working with Department of Health representatives, traveling around Chautauqua County, speaking to town boards, urging them to fluoridate their water. Well, it turns out that as my career started to wind down, I started seeing publications that no, indeed, optimum enamel formation is not dependent upon the presence of the fluoride ion in the bloodstream. In other words, topical application is just as effective. Now, where did that leave me in my relationship with the Department of Health? Okay, one with my end here. This was not bad science. It was just incomplete, as most science is. It was incomplete at the time. Thank you.
Hi, it's Joni Riggle, and there's 2 more projects coming, and I really sympathize with these people. The town did not adopt protective wind laws. Yes, supposedly the test that they did was compliant, but compliant does not mean protective. If you look at the DEC recommendations, the ambient air noise levels in this rural area is 25 decibels. The DEC for a new noise source says it should not be above 10 decibels above ambient, which would be 35. The noise study they just did in Arkwright was 37 to 44 dBAs, and if you look at how it was done, I truly question the methodology. Very subjective. The noise engineer subjectively subtracted. There's no meter to figure this out. Turbine noise, road noise, birds chirping, wind noise on the meter. So it's all kind of a guessing game in that sense. They didn't do a turbine shutdown or look at the pre-construction ambient. But anyways, so it's already 10 above, which according to DEC, 10 to 15 is very noticeable, 15 to 20 objectionable, and the town law is 50 dBA. So that's 25 above ambient, which is considered intolerable according to DEC standards. There's another EPA standard here that says, I can't find it, but for turbine noise, over 35 decibels of turbine-only noise is considered very objectionable to about 25% of the community. So I guess I would ask, I noticed that the Chautauqua County Town or Health Board of Health is not a stakeholder listed on these wind projects, and I do have information here how you can contact RES for Ball Hill Wind, and Casadega Wind is now sold to Energy, and I would strongly urge you to become stakeholders in these projects and just monitor what's going on. We have a foil of information here from another township out in Cat County, and it shows how the wind lawyer and the wind company comes in, and I have the map here, I'll leave it with you, and shows it. If you cut your setbacks to 1,000 feet versus 1,200 versus 1,800, we can squeeze in 30 turbines versus 10 turbines, and you're going to get $400,000 per megawatt per turbine. So the more you squeeze in, the more you concede and shorten these setbacks, we're going to make more money. And so all I'm asking, all I could say is it's not protective, these wind laws. compliant at 50 does not mean protective at all. Listen to these people. These turbines going into red for Ball Hill, 600 foot. The ones that we're going to get in Casadega theirs are 2.2 and 2.0 megawatts. Ours are going to be 3.6. The higher the power outage, the more infrasound. This travels for 40 miles. So people will be impacted. So I do think you're going to have to get involved. It is a public health issue, and I don't have to remind you, noise alone is a public health hazard. Noise, annoyance, cardiovascular, immune, neurological systems are all affected by it. So thank you for listening, but it's such a serious issue.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak at the privilege of the floor?
Yes. Karen Engstrom, Mayville. Over the past 4 months, 37 industrial wind turbines have been operating in Arkwright. That has increased the number of residents who have, and as the time goes by, the number of residents who have experienced classic symptoms from the exposure to infrasound has increased. And infrasound is any sound under 20 hertz. The position taken by the wind corporations is that if you can't hear it, it won't hurt you, and the state goes along with that. We talk about audible sounds, but what is obviously ignored is infrasound. What I'm going to offer you tonight is a video that was made by scientists and health workers in Germany who have discovered that over time, as the turbines increase in size, so does the magnitude of the health problems. The smaller ones were not a problem, but the newer ones are. So I'm going to give this to you, give them to each of the members. It's a video that's on the internet, and if you want to look it up on YouTube, it's called Infrasound and Industrial Wind Turbines. And make sure you put in video when you're looking that up, or go to YouTube and say Infrasound and Industrial Wind Turbines. The harmful effects are in there. They were studied by the military, the United States military, both the Navy and the Army, and they decided that there was a subliminal influence by these sub-audible brain waves. It affected the brain and the heart of the individuals, but not every individual. So that's why they abandoned it as a weapon, because only certain individuals would react to these. It is the same giant wind turbines. You can't be sure who will be affected, but as the turbines get larger, people do react to them. I urge you to seriously look into the health damage caused by the Arkwright wind turbines. There are a number of people that have been affected. Now, on a similar subject, but a separate subject, Casadega Wind has asked for an amendment of the New York Public Service Commission so that they can begin clearing trees. When they received a permit, they agreed to clear trees from November 1 to April 1 to prevent the loss of migrating and nesting birds and bats, and to prevent the erosion that comes during melt and during springtime. Now they're asking for a change of rules. So I'm going to hand this out to you. It tells you, it explains it, and it gives you the document that they've submitted. This document, they are asking to change the rules at this point in time, and they're giving us a deadline of January 21, which is 5 days away. We're asking that as citizens of this county that you look into it, you not as health board members, but as citizens, that you make yourself aware of what's happening in Casadega. It will be a cumulative effect as we have more and more of these. The blue piece at the back is the Western New York Public Health Alliance and their statement about how they feel that wind turbines are a public health hazard. So if you can share those, I'll just give them to you. The film is quite good, but as I said, anybody that doesn't get a copy can see it on the internet. It's under Industrial Wind Turbines and Infrasound on YouTube. Thank you.
I have kind of a personal statement here, and that is that over the years I've been involved in a number of environmental impact studies, and most of them have involved sound in one way or another. And a good example would be gravel pits. I've done a lot of environmental impact studies for gravel pits. Not the whole study, but the biology of it primarily. But when a gravel pit or gravel mine is proposed for an area, sound always becomes an issue. Because people living nearby don't want to be subjected to sounds associated with mining gravel. I remember, some of you may remember Bob Sundell, who taught biology at JCC. Bob was one of the best birders in New York State. And on several occasions, Bob and I would go out to the proposed gravel mine area, and we'd stay there for 24 hours because people wanted to know what birds were calling during the day and singing during the day and calling at night. So Bob and I would sit there with a campfire and we'd listen for the birds on a 24-hour basis. And just one other example, a woman lived right behind a local supermarket that had air conditioning on the roof. And her deck was right there. You know, she was looking out from her deck to the roof of the supermarket and hearing these air conditioners going 24/7. And it bothered her. So what we would do is take a decibel meter and we would record the decibels. And you know, you didn't want to be over 100 or whatever the number was. And I'm saying all this because that's not the issue here. Loud noises over 100 decibels or whatever are not the issue here. The issue is ILFN, infrasound and low frequency. And that can be just as devastating to somebody as 100 or 110 decibels if a Harley Davidson goes down the street. In fact, it can be even more devastating because of the long-term nature of this. And that's what we're dealing with. And I wanted to make that statement. So, you know, I don't know how we want to handle this. Do we as a Board of Health here in Chautauqua County want to accept the challenge? Or do we want to accept the mantle of dealing with this? Or do we not? Someone suggested the term stakeholder earlier in the public speaking part of this. Do we want to become a stakeholder in this? How do we want to proceed? That's the question, as I see it.
Well, I had a question on one of the presentations, and I don't know if it's appropriate to ask, but it had to do with, I think it was Dr. Twitchell's paper on the second page on number 5. Did I hear that the State Department of Health was involved with the Casadega project?
I think the State Department of Health is certainly involved with this, and you know.
Well, it says with that particular one.
I think all of the wind farms, are they not? No.
Well, and DEC.
If I may, and I don't know if you've seen this yet, I'm co-chair of the Western New York Public Health Alliance, and that's made up of the public health directors and commissioners of the 8 counties in Western New York, and there's some other community members like our rural health networks and such. And we put a letter together and sent to the Secretary of the Commissioner of the Public Service Commission in New York, because we have discussed turbines at great length at our meetings, especially in relation to Niagara and Orleans counties, because the windmills that they were proposing to put up along the banks there of Lake Ontario, where I apologize if I don't have this right, but I'm trying to remember. I think they're higher than the Empire State Building. They were massive, what they're proposing to be put up there. And some of the issue that everyone is having is that the classification of the wind turbine projects right now really waives any need or any requirement for them to have a full seeker review. So right now, they're under state statute, there is no requirement that any of these wind projects actually go through a full seeker review. And our request in this letter to the state was asking for that to be changed so that any and all of these projects will have to have a full seeker environmental review prior to consideration by the Article 10 Siting Board. And I guess as public health directors and commissioners, we felt that until the state acts and requires this full environmental review, it really, our ability to do anything even under home rule is undermined. So I don't know if this...
Did you hear back from it?
No. But I don't know if something similar to this would be, the board, might want to consider, drafting, similar letter, coming from the Board of Health, in addition to what we sent in. This is back in June to the state.
So there's absolutely no seeker review for a wind project?
I believe it's a limited, is it?
I think it depends on the size of the project.
What's
There are
that?
various different levels of seeker that can happen.
I think it depends on the size of the project, from my understanding.
Well, yeah, there is, but this should be the one of the higher levels.
Yeah, we're asking that every single one of these wind projects have a full seeker review, and that does not happen now on any of them because it's not required.
Well, when you consider the area of land that is involved in these things, and the tons of concrete that are put into the soil at the base, and the roads going in, and the electrical connections, rights of way, and all of that. I mean, it's astounding to me that there's no seeker review.
I think there has been some. I don't know for sure. I'm not, on the Arkwright boards or anything, but I think Arkwright did conduct some secret assessments,
Some form,
review,
yes.
And
no one's done a full.
I'm not familiar with the details of it because it's not a county seeker. Because it's not a county seeker. Right.
That would be
It's the
under
local municipalities.
It would be the local municipality before they approve it would have to decree one way or the other.
So, the county doesn't, hasn't approved the projects and whatnot. So I don't have intimate details on it, but I think at least Arkwright, I think they did some type of seeker review. I can't tell you what it looked like, but it's the municipalities where it's situated. They have planning laws, they have zoning laws, and so before they're authorizing certain items, villages and towns and whatnot do have to comply with seeker. What they did, I don't know.
So one option would be for this board to send a letter similar to this.
Does the Board of Health have any power in saying wind turbines need to be a certain distance from a home where people live?
My understanding, the Board of Health does not have that power.
Does not?
That's my understanding.
So who would have the power? The Public Service Commission?
Yes, I guess the Public Service.
I'm sorry?
Yes, I
see.
believe that's true.
That's why I
Board of Health, or I mean,
yes.
State Department of Health, perhaps.
This is a very interesting issue when you think about it. It's got levels that go, from the political to the environmental to the. I drove across the United States in September to go see my daughter in Denver, and as soon as you get past a certain point in Iowa, it's windmills everywhere, but there's no one living there, and they're just farms of them, and it's ideal in a sense to generate power there because of the wind and everything else, and it's a renewable source in a sense. On the other hand, we're burning fossil fuels and we're killing the environment with that. And all of us here drive a car and no one here is complaining about the car they're driving, and it's just killing the environment. But on the other hand, this source of energy, if you put it in the wrong place, even though I'm sure where they're situating them, there is wind and they can generate energy, it's in the wrong place.
People are living there, right?
But you could put on each house a very small one, and generate for local, you could do that, you know. And it would probably not make the noise these things are making. Who knows? But this is just a question of it's an issue of how large this thing should be, how close to a home it should be. What's the data to support this low frequency noise, you know, pollution that you're getting, and how injurious is it to health? And you probably, even though there's studies, this is, you know, the science is kind of like anything else. Everybody can argue about the science and you know, the climate and whatever else and all these things, and you get into there's a lot of money involved here, and they're just pushing these into places that probably they shouldn't be, especially at the size that it's a very complex issue. And obviously also the jurisdictions are, you're saying it's health can't, the state health department isn't dealing with it, or public service commission, who knows what's happening there, what pressures they're getting from industry to push it. You know, it's just a very complex issue.
What is the current World Health Organization advice as far as decibels? Because it's listed here that the Cassadaga wind allows noise 10 decibels louder than the current.
World Health Organization guidelines, I think they're 45? 45
Thank you.
decibels.
So this must be 55, I'm sorry.
So I heard asked earlier, you know, what can we do, what can't we do? There are certain powers that lie within, for example, municipalities. You know, setback requirements can be imposed on all sorts of things. If this board had something in particular that they wanted to accomplish, I don't know if you would have a committee look into it or whatever have you. It's something where you could look at it, you know, okay, this is what we would want to accomplish, this is the science or the health purpose of it, and I'd be happy to research your ability to do, if you tell me this is what we want to accomplish, your ability to do so. Obviously you cannot tell a village you must pass a law that does such and such. But if you had some type of resolution or something that somebody wanted to sponsor that wouldn't run afoul of somebody else's powers, if it's something that the state has a higher authority in some respects than counties do. So the county can't just go and regulate anything they want if the state already has occupied a field. For example, you know, we can't say, oh, well, we're gonna say that you can murder people in our county. I mean, you just can't do that. So if you have something that you want to accomplish in particular, I'm happy to look at.
But the state health department has not listed any criteria or any recommendations or anything like that. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of the state health department doing it. They have not issued regulations.
Well, why don't they get on the stick on that, I wonder?
I don't know. I know the DEC has involvement. I think NYSERDA is also involved with these. So I don't know if it's been delegated to certain arms of the state. I just don't know what the state's done at that level. But you know, if you have a committee that looks into it and has certain things you want to try to accomplish, I'm happy to.
Well, somewhere in the bylaws we do have the option of setting up a committee. Do we not?
Yes, you do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that may be a good first step to establish a committee to research certain questions. I think, you know, all you have to do is listen to people, and you know that there's a problem. Maybe not for everybody. Maybe it's the proximity of the house to the tower. But clearly this is, at least for some people, a health issue.
I mean, NYSERDA is not involved with health.
No,
I
but
mean,
they might be involved with wind farms.
Yeah,
oh,
well,
for sure.
And
but
so
I mean,
how the state is divided up,
this
who's
is going to end up by
responsible
being
for
like the cigarettes, you know. It took them 5,000 years to say they were bad for you. Not NYSERDA, but I mean...
no, I understand. I'm just saying the state seems to have delegated authority over wind farms, at least in part, to one arm.
From the energy people.
So I don't know how how the arms of the state would interact with each other, if you will. I mean, you can't have one set of regulations from one part of the state saying you can have this, and another set of regulations saying you can't have that.
Yeah.
So they.
Well, would you be willing to just serve on a committee if?
I'm not a board member, so I can't.
Oh,
but I
you
would
could
be
devise
happy
legal
to.
counsel.
I can submit.
She's advisory.
Yeah.
Your legal advisor.
Well, I'm not a board member either, but I would suggest that we ask Kristen at least to research what the possibilities are for the board and how they could get involved in this from a legal point of view with all these different players that obviously each have a piece of this. NYSERDA, the Public Service Commission, the State Health Department. I mean, that wouldn't be a bad idea, at least to know what levels of jurisdiction you're dealing with and what their input is or what their level of input is in all of this.
I need to know what you wanted to accomplish, really. I mean, can you send a letter? Of course you can send a letter.
Mm-hmm.
If someone wants to, I mean, you all know that if someone said, oh, there's some resolution, something we want to try to accomplish, you'd need someone to, legislative on the county level, you'd need someone to support that. I mean, I have to know what you would want to accomplish.
But what are the sources of advocacy, though? I mean, do you know what I mean? Which way to go? Which is the fastest?
You have to watch out on
quickest way?
lobbying because that could jeopardize funding that the county receives, and not in a political way, but you cannot use money that comes from other sources that's supposed to be used for public health for lobbying is what the restriction is. So before you go spending money that's designed to help with lead, you can't take that money and use it for another purpose. So you have to be careful with using money that's given to you for public health to use it toward lobbying. But that's just the money part of it, if that makes sense.
No, I wasn't really thinking of lobbying so much as as a Board of Health, what are the methods that we can
What are your
use
powers and
to
authorities?
advocate for the Department of Health, the State Department of Health, for example, to list some guidelines for local boards, that kind of thing.
You can, as I said before, you can send letters. I don't know what you would have in mind about. I mean,
There is a possibility when we have a cluster of cancer cases. You can go and ask requests for an epidemiological study. You have a cluster of people here complaining of onset of symptoms. You could possibly ask the State Health Department to investigate the fact you now have a group of people who are complaining of, and it's a cluster in a community.
Do they have to have physician documentation?
I don't know how responsive they are.
Oh, that is
very
reported
responsive. They're
cancer
responsive to cluster disease clusters. They are. And it's kind of a backdoor way of doing it, but you have people complaining about symptom clusters. I mean, I don't know how you move these people off the building, but
Yeah, right.
And you don't have a list of powers like, well, they can do this, they can do that, but it doesn't mean you can't pick up the phone and call another Board of Health and say, hey, what are you seeing there? So nothing says, you can call other boards of health and inquire what's going on and write letters together. Nothing says you can do that, but you can.
Yeah, at the end of this month, I have the New York State Association of County Health Officials meeting in Albany. So this is something that I can bring up as a topic at our statewide meeting and see, we're not the only county that's been dealing with, this issue. So I can throw it out there and see what other counties are doing, what other boards of health are doing.
Would you do that?
That's
that would be a good start.
helpful as a good place to start.
See if
Lisa,
anybody
did you
has
have-
an ordinance, in their
I haven't heard of
area.
any in New York yet on that. But Lisa, did you?
I just wanted to suggest that these issues are so closely tied to community planning that including our county planning board and kind of jointly addressing that, because so many of these are really our planning issues, and they are county, they are things that impact the county there, and our county has limited direction or control over local planning boards, but in some cases we do. If things are within a certain distance of a county road or something like that, it goes for review. But I think we need to look at kind of a health and all policies perspective. and integrate this more closely, because that's where you already have those powers. And it doesn't help folks that already have these turbines in your backyards, but moving forward, it may help to guide, you know, limit the health impacts if we do good planning around it.
Other ideas?
Well, we have different policies already, you know, for sewers and holding tanks and so on and so forth. So I'm just sort of wondering if you could, with the risk investigation and seeing if there are any similar ordinances in other parts of the state. You know, I know there's one in Wisconsin, I guess it was noted. Just wondering if that's something that could be recommended from the Board of Health and taken up by the legislature, just a thought. Ordinance, policy, I don't know.
Dr. Twitchell, do you have comments, suggestions?
I'd very much appreciate the opportunity to provide board members with the official New York State policy on wind turbine noise exposure that accompanied the first Article 10 wind energy facility installation in Cassadaga. This was written 2 years ago. They've already amended it for a wind facility in Steuben County. And I pointed that out in my handout, whereby the Department of Health is recommending 55 decibels for people in Chautauqua County. But now, since the World Health Association published their
45
in October of 18, who came out with 45 decibels. So now, New York State DOH is already in an uncomfortable position.
It sounds like they're in an evolution.
Yeah, very much. Just as we all are. I mean, this is a pretty, you know, pretty recent to everyone. Right. But I would very much like to, I have that document, and you know, that's something that I could share with anyone who's interested.
Thank you.
You know, it's very similar to the lead we were talking about earlier. 15 used to be a number we didn't even think about because we were seeing 75.
Yeah.
Now 5, and everybody's starting to get, oh, this kid needs, we got to look at that house. And I think we're just more sensitive to the fact that some of this that we're looking at has subtle long-term, you know, effects that you really just, it's very hard to measure, very hard, you know, get anecdotal, someone's complaining they've got tinnitus now, you know, it's just anecdotal data, and and it just takes a while and the computing power to finally look at it, a large enough data sort to finally realize you've got something more than just people complaining, you know, that it's real. That's the issue here.
And it's a good thing. I think as a board we can, I propose that we at least make a statement that we remain concerned about, and I'll leave the finesse of language to you. Finesse of language is not one of the things that comes to physicians very easily. But that we remain concerned with these developments and the lack of science or evolving science around these wind turbines, and are actively pursuing further information so we can make recommendations to our county legislature for the future guidelines for these wind farms. Chautauqua County is huge, and if we don't somehow the other shackle these farms and have some proper, or based on the science that's available to us now, some regulations, this can go haywire and cause a lot of damage long term, which we may not be aware of. So it's an opportunity for our health board to be a trendsetter and look into it. And we could be on record that we are looking into it.
And I think the avenues to look at are along the local law side, but also our sanitary code. And we adopt the state sanitary code, but then we can also add to that. So I think that's probably the avenue we would look at going down if that is evidence out there that the board wants to do that. I think we have some more homework to do.
Well, clearly we do, so I would be glad to take that responsibility. Kristen, perhaps you and I could work together a little bit.
I'm happy to do the legal part again. I'm not a member, so I can't serve as a member, but if you, you know, if you have questions on something, I'm happy to assist.
So you'll address it at your state meeting then?
Yes, I will, and maybe something, actually something that would be good to have anyway, even at least in our region, would be contacts, like the president of the boards of health of the other counties. So if it's something you wanted to discuss, not just this, but other topics, you would have some more resources there to do that.
Twitchell, if I could,
Thank you.
I have to talk to you some more. As needed.
That's time, right?
Sorry.
Versus the 45 that the World Health Association.
Yes, they published 55. That was in.
What department of New York State?
That's the New York State Health Department.
Well, it was the Health Department, so they do have criteria.
The Department of Health. Yes. Prior to
I
that,
thought I
they had not
understood
published
that.
anything. DOH had not published any noise studies of their own. But under pressure with, the clean energy standard, they had to come up with a document. And that's the document I'm referring to that states what their position is.
Okay, right now.
Right now.
So we need to see that, right?
Okay, we'll proceed on this basis then. Is everybody cleared?
Yes.
Any questions? I'll be in communication with you, Dr. Twitchell. Christine, you can do what you said, and we'll move ahead. And we're meeting in 2 months, so we'll generate a report.
Well, anyway,